In this video, we're going to be demoing a game of Kror. Now, the first thing to do when setting up a game is to create an army. In this game, we have two identical armies. The army is the barbaric tribes, and we have in this army here, we have a warlord, a troop of raider cavalry, a troop of warband, a hunter troop, and a behemoth. And this is an identical army. Models are a little bit different, but they're still the same. With the warlord, warband, raider cavalry, hunters, and behemoth. So the first thing you want to do is to set up some terrain. You want anywhere between 5 and 10 pieces of terrain, just to make the battlefield a little bit more interesting. Here we have 7. And there aren't any actual rules when it comes to setting up terrain. It's more of an agreement between the two players. So Ash, if you want to set up 4 bits, and I will set up 3. I'm going to stick mine here. Did you set up 4 bits? There, and we will go here. Right, excellent. After that, you want to have a roll off to see how the table is going to be split. So, you want to take a dice. So you rolled a 1, I rolled a 3. And just to keep things simple, we'll split the table across horizontally. So this will be the middle point of the battlefield. Anything up there will be Ash's territory. Anything down here will be mine. Now, because I won the roll-off, I get to deploy my first unit. And it has to be deployed 12 inches away from the enemy territory. So I've only got this amount of space to deploy my whole army. But I'm going to deploy my warband unit first. And then Ash, you get to deploy a unit.
I'll just deploy these ones here.
Okay. I'm going to deploy my raider cavalry out on the flanks.
So I have more. I'm going to deploy them in a line.
Then I will deploy my hunters here.
And deploy behemoth there.
Behemoth there. I will deploy my warlord here. And actually tuck him back because he's a little too far up.
Deploy my warlord here.
I'm going to, and then my final unit will be my behemoth here, and I'm going to give him, hopefully get him in combat with that other behemoth because that'll be nice and fun. 2 big monsters battling each other.
I'm trying to use mine to just bowl out your little dudes first. And then my cavalry.
All right, so I, because I finished deploying first, I get to have a +1 to my dice roll to see if I take the first activation. So Ash, roll the dice. So we're a 5. If I don't beat a 5, no, I get a 5, so that's a tie, and then we'll roll it again. And I get a 6, which means I take the first activation. Right, so this game's split up into turns, rounds, and activations. A round is a series of turns, and a turn is a single activation. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to march up my men forward. Now when you move forward, you move your speed distance. So with these hunters, it's 6 inches. And then after that, if you move, you're allowed to shoot. You're also allowed to pivot 90 degrees. So short bows only have a range of 18, which is what the hunters are equipped with. Ash, could you measure out 18 for me? Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm not within range of anything to shoot. So that is my activation done and my turn done. So then Ash goes on to her first turn.
I'm going to move my shooters.
Your hunters. Yep.
Forward. How far can they go?
Well, if you do a standard movement, you can move up to 6 inches. And after that, you will be able to pivot 90 degrees and shoot.
6.
Yep. You go up from all the way to the front. You don't have to move up 6, but that's the maximum you can move up.
And their shooting ranges?
18. Yep.
So I'll see if I can reach anything. And I can.
Right, so those hunters can shoot those hunters. Now, normally, whenever you shoot, you have to draw a straight line from one target to another. This is kind of to represent the line of firing and line of sight. However, because hunters are equipped with short bows, a weapon that you can fire up into the air and still hit a target, you ignore the penalties for shooting over your men or over enemies' men, so they can shoot those. Now, the first thing to do when to shoot is to get the a number of dice equal to your attacks. So, for example, the hunters, if I find their page, in a troop size, which is what we have chosen, they have 10 attacks. So, Ash, if you could get 10 dice, please. Now you would compare your ranged offense to your enemy's defense. Hunters have a range offense of 3 and they have a defense of 3. So you would roll these 10 dice, and because the two values are equal, a 4-up is what you need. And when we say a 4-up, that means a 4 higher on a 6-sided dice.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's 4. So that means 4 damage has been inflicted upon these hunters. Now, whenever a unit takes damage, it needs to take a morale check. So these hunters, in a troop size, their health value is 4, which means that they are still okay. They're not wavering yet or broken. As you take more damage, it gets harder and harder to actually keep your men on the battlefield. So what I have to do is I have to roll a d6, and unless I get a 6, these guys are staying here. Unfortunately, I get a 6, which means that these men immediately pivot towards the nearest edge of the table, which would be this edge here, or edge of the battlefield. So they pivot there, and they would immediately rush towards the edge of the battlefield, which means they double their movement, so it'd be 12. And 12 inches is more than enough for them to flee the field, which means these hunters have been removed from play. Right, well, that was pretty nasty. But what I'm going to do is, because that is her turn over, or she's activated a unit, which means it's the end of her turn, I'm going to try and do something a little bit nasty myself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to charge those hunters with my Raider cavalry. So my Raiders have a 12-inch movement, so they would automatically move up 12. Well, no, actually, no, they wouldn't actually automatically move up 12, but they would have 12 automatically added onto their charge distance. Then I would roll 2d6. So that would go up to 14, which means that I don't get within charging distance. I can't make the charge because it's obviously this distance is way greater than 14 inches, which means I would move up half. before my men realise that this is a bit futile and they're not going to be able to make it and they lose momentum. And that is my activation done, which means, Ash, you get to activate a unit.
I would like to charge with these, please.
Right, so the warband has a movement of 6. So you take 2d6, or 6-sided dice. 5. So 6 plus 5 would be 11, which unfortunately is not enough to get within charging distance. So that means that you would move up half, and in the case of a decimal like this, 5.5, you would round up. So you would move 6 inches. All right. Oops, sorry, I'll remove that. Now, units cannot be activated more than once per round. Thank you very much, Ash, for letting me know that. So that Raider Cavalry, these Warband, and those Hunters can't be used again until the next round. Now, it's my turn, and I'm going to choose to activate this Warband. Now, I'm not going to charge, but I am going to rush. And rushing means that you can't pivot at all, and you can't fight in melee combat. The idea is that your men have stowed away their weapons to quickly move up the field. It can be a good way to get into a more defensible position, or to secure an objective if needs be. So they're going to rush up, and they're going to go, I almost knocked that guy, 12 inches, and they're going to block this area here. We're going to be counting all this terrain as impassable, which means your men can't move over it. It can be slightly problematic when you're bringing a giant horde with you, but we've only got small troops. And that is my activation done. So I've blocked that area. My flank is secure on this side because I've got my Raider Cavalry there. No unit, with the exception of maybe a single warlord, can pass through that gap. My left flank is a little bit more open, but the behemoth is lying in wait, so if anyone is daring enough to move forward, they'll have to get in combat, potentially with a large monstrous creature. Ash, it is your turn.
I'd like to use my behemoth.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to move forward, and do I have any range attacks?
Not with the behemoth. The behemoth is a melee monster. It's designed to smash opponents up.
Right, well, I'll move him anyway.
Alright.
I'm just going to move him forward. How far?
I will quickly check. Let's gain some focus here. Now, this document here is a work in progress and it's not quite done yet. A few changes to the rules, as well as some artwork and some lore will be added in. The behemoth has a speed value of 10, so...
So, could he move up to there, or would the terrain make him impassable?
He could move up to here. Now, as a single unit, they can pivot... they can pivot 360 degrees no matter what. And at the same time, you don't have to pivot at the beginning and at the end. You can pivot halfway through. So you could potentially move up 5, pivot here, move up 5.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Certain rules might be implemented in the future, maybe like a disorderly movement, which allows you to traverse through rough terrain. Monstrous creatures might have the ability to simply smash through terrain and remove it, which could be a good, effective way to deal with an enemy who's in a fortified position, to break through their barriers, because obviously a monstrous creature like a behemoth is not going to have a problem with a simple wooden palisade. And of course, a behemoth can be represented by any kind of model. The idea behind the tribal barbarians, or the barbaric tribals as they're actually called, is that they're meant to be they represent many different peoples on the planet of Kror. So a behemoth could be a giant mammoth, a giant reptilian creature, some kind of big slug. Whatever you really want, it's up to the player. Now...
So he can't attack because he's not in melee combat.
Yeah.
So I guess that's me done then.
Right, what I'm going to do is that a behemoth can move up 10. So fold this over. So that's a 10 inch. Which means I've probably only got maybe 14 inches, maybe 15, We'll just mark that there. Obviously, in a casual game, you don't have to worry so much. So that would be an extra, 14 inches I would have to make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to charge that behemoth with this behemoth. Now, this is just a problem with the modeling because obviously we're using proxy models for now. But all units in this game would technically be on a square base. This will allow for flank attacks and rear charging. So this isn't a square base, obviously it's circular, but this charge would be in the creature's flanks, which means I'd be getting +1 to my offense. If you charge an opponent in the rear, you get +2 to your offense. So when you can, try to hit the enemy in the sides or in the backs so you can deal as max damage as possible. But knowing my dice rolls, I'm about to roll a 3 and not a 4. Or, I roll a 10 and I charge in. Now, because that unit has already been activated, it's not going to be able to fight back this turn. So I would take if we look at the behemoth stats, it has 6 attacks. And it is offense 8 and defense 5. So if you compare the two, 8 is greater than 5, but it's not double 5. So I would have to roll a 3 up on these to wound it. However, a behemoth has an absolute bucket load of health. So I doubt this behemoth's going to go down anytime soon. If I charge this creature in the rear, I would be getting +2 to my offense, which means I would have 10. And that means that I would be wounding it on a 2. But I only got a flank attack, which makes no difference. Next round, Ash will be able to pivot this behemoth so that it's in face-to-face combat, which means I would no longer gain the bonus. The only way I would be able to prevent this is if I had another unit attacking it, in which case Ash will have to prioritize one unit or the other. Which means potentially if I had a unit here attacking it, Ash could choose to pivot towards this behemoth, in which case it would be attacked in the flank by this unit, or pivot towards that unit, in which case the behemoth would attack in the flank.
Could I potentially, once you've attacked me and it's then my activation turn again, could I move him back some and then pivot and attack from the flank?
No.
Or would it just be
when you if you activate a unit that is already in melee combat, you have 2 options between retaliating and falling back. A unit that falls back is not able to attack or charge. It moves out the way of combat, and that's its main focus. Now, or it can retaliate, in which case it pivots towards the unit and attacks it. Falling back might seem like a bad idea, but potentially, though, you could bait a unit to charge something that's kind of expendable, like a thrall, a weak slave unit that's not really going to be too much of a fuss if you lose it. They then fall back, and then you charge in a behemoth. So, 6 attacks. I need 3s to wound this target. And I get 3. Excellent. So it takes 3 points of damage. That unit would then have to take a morale check, but behemoths are fairly scary, so they have 6 morale. That might be increased. I'm not entirely sure, because they are meant to be large, powerful monsters, but at the same time, they're not disciplined. They're at the end of the day, they're animals. So Ash, if you could roll a d6. And anything short of a 6 will be okay. You're 1, that behemoth's not going anywhere anytime soon. Now that is that activation done. So you can do your activation.
If I were to charge, would I be able to attack as well?
Yes. Charging is how you attack. Yeah. So I charged with this behemoth into your behemoth, which means I was able to attack it.
Yeah. But if I were to rush, I wouldn't be able to attack.
No. Rushing is potentially... You can charge further than you can rush, but you're not always guaranteed. Like, if that Raider Cavalry were to rush, it's guaranteed to go 24 inches. Mm-hmm. In fact, charging with Raider Cavalry is actually a little bit worse because the max you can roll on 2d6 is 12, whereas you're guaranteed to do that if you rush. Mm-hmm. However, you can't attack if you rush. Sorry about that.
So how far can my cavalry charge?
Well, their minimum charge is is going to be 14 inches.
Okay.
So yeah, you could potentially charge this unit.
But I would have to move some man and then pivot.
Yes, and when you charge, you can pivot 90 degrees.
Right. So I'm going to charge 10.
Oh, you'd have to roll your 2d6 first to see if you actually make it.
7.
So that's a 17, which will take you to, that'll be, you're going to charge 10 and then another 7. Yeah, that's no problem.
Yes, should I just put it there?
Yeah, so now this, it'll be in the creature's. Now I will class that as the creature's rear. So you're getting an extra +2 to your offense.
Yes, I would like to hit him.
And of course you're going to hit them. So we'll quickly check the rules here for Raider Cavalry. Raider Cavalry, you have 5 attacks. Your offense is normally 3, but it is boosted to 5, which means you would normally be wounding this creature on 5s, but now you wound it on 4s.
So 5 there. And 4.
4 lots of damage from attacking it in the rear, which goes to show how important it is to get the right position on your enemy. Because the most important part of this game is probably going to be positioning. Alright, well, that behemoth wouldn't be able to fight back now because it's already attacked this behemoth. However, I have one last unit to activate, and it is my war leader. Now, leaders in this game are... they can be powerful. You can kit them out with special gear and equipment, which will be later implemented in the game. But at the end of the day, they're still just men. It's ideal to mount them up on creatures or give them magical gear. Now, here's a movement of 6, which means I'm going to need a... Let's have a look, probably... Yeah, I'm going to need maybe a 5 on the charge. I'm going to attempt it, though, because that's not impossible. Well, bang on, just what I needed. So he would then charge these guys in the flank, getting +1 to his offense. Now, the wall leaders or the barbaric tribes are powerful warriors. Yeah, they're still human, but they're very strong humans. So he has an offense of 6. And it's in the flank, so it turns to 7. These rules, of course, are subject to change. The more games we have, the more likely they are to become balanced. So he would take... I would just quickly check how much attacks he has. He has 7 attacks. I feel like the wall leader might have to be slightly nerfed. It depends on how squishy he is. And because I charged you in the flanks, I would be wounding you on 2s. Which means I get 6 damage done to that unit. I think that will probably have to be nerfed sometime in the future. Maybe reduce down the war leader's offense to a 5. Recently, this army went through a big rehaul, and some of the units have yet to be balanced to match the rest of the army. So that's 6 damage, Ash. You would have to then roll a single dice, and it has to beat... Actually, no, Ash. You are now classed as being broken. See, you have 3 different health values, if I focus. The first one being when you start to waver. So if I deal 3 or more damage, you roll 2 dice. But the second value is when your unit is starting to break, and the third value is when that unit is dead. So because it's on the second value, you actually have to roll 3 dice and get higher than 7. Get lower than 7 on 3 dice. However, if you roll triple 1s, then that unit never has to flee ever in the game and gets +1 to the offense. It's the idea that they're fighting to the death, some kind of heroic surge. So...
I got 5.
You got 5. That unit is staying despite the massive damage that's just being dealt with. This barbaric warlord comes charging over with a greatsword, cleaving his way through several men and horses, but they stand firm. And that is all my units activated, so it's up to Ash to finish her activation, which she only has her warlord.
Yep. Does this warlord have ranged attack?
No, they don't. At least not at the moment. Eventually I plan on doing special relics that you can give out to your warlords that will allow them to take magical items. But at the moment they just have simple swords, axes, simple hand weapons for now.
Well, I'm going to charge.
You're going to charge a unit. Apologies, got a dry throat.
To charge your...
Now, Ash, the maximum distance that unit can charge would be 18.
Right, so that might not be...
So...
Yeah, that wouldn't be enough. So...
Yeah, unfortunately. Nothing stopping you from rushing to get 12 inches up.
Yeah, I'll rush.
Bear in mind that the war leaders increase, or the warlords, increase the morale of any barbaric unit by 1, just by being near them. The idea is that they're meant to be like an inspiring war hero.
Is there a way I could just move? Is that amount to be up the table?
Yeah, you can either move up your 6, or you can rush to move up 12. Now, you don't have to move up the maximum distance.
Could I rush 10?
You could rush 10. All right. So that is the round done, which means that we would now have a roll-off to see who goes next. So Ash rolled a 1. I rolled a 3. I get the next activation. What I'm going to do is kind of difficult, actually, because I don't want my behemoth to die. But I feel like my behemoth might die. But at the same time, if I don't do anything on this right flank, I risk losing Raider Cavalry. Oh, apologies, we're going to have to pause. Apologies about that. We had a delivery come that interrupted the video. But we'll continue now, and I am going to... You know what? I'm just going to risk it. I'm hoping that if I pivot this unit... Luckily, the model is not actually glued. Well, actually, that might be a bad idea. I'll just pull this base out for a second. Flip it round. And go here. The idea behind this attack is that I'm hoping to wipe out a unit. And because my warlord is an inspiring hero... I'm hoping that when the behemoth attacks me in the flanks, this warlord can keep the behemoth, my behemoth, under control and not have it flee. And hopefully I can deal enough damage to this unit to wipe it out. Now, 6 attacks. Wounding on 2s. So, and that is 4 more damage. Unfortunately, Ash, that Raider Cavalry only has a health value of 10 as its maximum, which means it's not going to be retreating because it's dead. Yeah. So that is a unit gone. So that's 2 ways you can defeat an enemy. By making their units flee off the table, like with my hunters, or by just wiping them out. In the future, there's going to be more armies added to the game. Maybe some unit armies that might not have morale, maybe like fearless undead or ancient constructs that don't get scared and have to be hacked down to the very last man. So that is my activation done, which means, Ash, it is your turn to activate something.
Right, I'm going to activate my war leader.
Okay.
Warlord.
It's okay.
I'm going to charge.
Oh, you sneaky.
Say that's enough?
Well, you're going to at least be moving up 6, so you would have to roll 6 on it. Well, actually, to be fair, that's an 11. You'd have to roll 5 on 2d6.
And I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. So that would be 4. That would go to 10, and halving that to 5 would mean you move up.
I'm going to get shot.
You're not going to get shot because my hunters have ran away. Like the
Oh.
cowardly dogs. Right. Now, this is a problem. My platoon has blocked that route. And so is my behemoth. So that's kind of blocking. Now, friendly units can pass through one another. But that is a very big charge. 6 would get me to there. And then, if I'll just mark that with a dice, I'm going to need at least... I'm going to need at least roll 2 6s to get up there. Or I can be very, very, very devilish. And I'm going to charge my Raider Cavalry into your war leader. Are they within the facing flank? Yep, they're within the front arc, so I can charge it. You can only charge things that are in your front arc. So you can't charge something that's behind you. So I will attempt. I can move at least 12, which is enough for me to get into combat. So regardless of what I roll here, I'm in there, but I'll roll anyway. It's a 7. So, then again, that piece of terrain blocks it. Well, if that's the case, then I will instead direct my charge into these warband. Not entirely sure if that's the best idea, but I'll do it anyway. So 5 attacks. The Raider Cavalry have an offense of 3, and the Warband have a defense of 3. So, because those are equal, I need 4s. Oh, hey, I managed to do 4 damage to your Raiders. Not your Raiders, your Warband. Now, let's have a look here real quick, just to check the rules and to see what the Warband's morale is. Ooh, went past it, my apologies. And we'll focus here. So you have a health, your minimum health value is 5, which means you're not rolling 2 dice, and you need to get a 7. See, Warband are kind of, they represent the brave, fearless warriors of these barbaric tribes. And of course, you can't roll a 7 on a 6-sided dice, so those warriors aren't fleeing no matter what happens.
Would the rules apply with the 1 though? If I were to roll a 1, would they then not want to flee, or is that only with multiple dice?
That's only with multiple dice. The idea is that if you were to waver and you have to roll 2 dice, double 1 will always be a success on your side. And if you're broken, you have to roll 3 dice. Then, if you roll triple 1, your men become insanely brave. Well, that's that activation done. So,
can I attack back since they've not been activated?
Well, if you choose to activate that unit now,